Hi, this is Melody Rondeau, and we are going to be talking about writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Our learning intention today is I'm learning to write the equation of a line that is parallel or perpendicular to a given line in slope-intercept form. We have two success criteria. They are very similar. So I'm going to kind of combine them as I read them to you. I can use slope-intercept form to write the equation of a line that is parallel to a given line, or the second one says that is perpendicular to a given line. Let's get started. So, quick review of what we've done so far. The slopes of parallel lines, let me get the right color here, geez. The slopes of parallel lines, we talked about this as the slope of one line is equal to the slope of the other. So parallel lines have equal slopes. Perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. That looks kind of like this. The slope of one line might be, for example, two numbers a over b, and then the slope of the perpendicular line would be the negative reciprocal. So if I make it the opposite sign and flip that fraction. Then we have slope-intercept form. We talked about that briefly before. This is y equals mx plus b. And then in your notes here, you have point-slope form. We're not going to worry about point-slope form, so actually I would like you guys to cross that out, and we're going to remind ourselves about what the slope formula is. We wrote it in a previous set of notes, but I just want to remind us that that slope formula. So here goes with the slope formula. It is m equals y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. All right, those are all the things we're going to need for our lesson today. Let's go ahead and get started with some examples. All right, example 1. We're going to write the equation for a line that is parallel to y equals 3 over 2x plus 5. That also passes through the point. We'll talk about that point in just a second. But first, I want to remind us parallel means that our lines have the same slope. Cool. All right. And so as we're building these equations, we're going to be trying to write our equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. Essentially, we're going to take everything we know and plug it in. So, things we know, back up to that idea of parallel, we know that our new line that we're writing the equation for has the same slope. So the slope in this equation would be the 3 over 2, that number right in front of the x. All right, so I'm going to fill in my equation that I'm building. I know I need the same slope, so I'm going to put in a slope of 3 over 2. So I'm going to put that into my equation right there, just like I did. And then other things that I know, they also gave me that ordered pair, and they told me my line passes through 2, 7. So what they're telling me what they're telling you when they give you a point, they are giving you an x value and a y value. So I'm going to literally plug those in. For x, I'm going to plug in 2, and for y, I'm going to plug in 7. And I'm going to write plus b. B is the only thing that I don't know. So at this stage, my goal is going to be to figure out what b is. All right, so to do that, I have this weird fraction stuff going on, 3 over 2 times 2. I'm going to make my 2 a fraction by putting a 1 under it. Then I multiply straight across. If you know how to cross cancel, go ahead. Otherwise, again, straight across for multiplying. So I would get 3 times 2 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2, and then I have plus b. All right, simplify again. 6 divided by 2 gives me 3. So I'm looking for 3 plus what number is 7, or do inverse operations here and subtract the 3 from both sides, and we get that b is 4. So once you know your b, then we're ready to write our equation. When we write our equation in that slope-intercept form, the key is to fill in the m and the b, and I'm actually going to highlight those in a slightly different color. So we want to fill in the slope and we want to fill in the y-intercept. So I'm going to write my equation, which was my goal here. So I would say y equals my slope that we said was 3 over 2. Then I have x, and then my y-intercept for my new equation would be 4. Notice I take the x and the y and turn them back into variables. This would be how I write the equation of a line. And that's the answer for our first example. As soon as I can box this up, let's go to the next one. Perfect. All right, on to the next one. Example 2, write the equation of the line that is parallel to negative 4/3 x plus 1 that also passes through the point. So one more time, this is parallel, which means same slope. And the slope here would be the negative 4/3. And I want to have, if I'm doing parallel lines, I want the same slope. So I'm just going to copy that, negative 4/3. And then it passes through the point 6, negative 3, which I know if they give me an ordered pair, that is an x and a y value. So I'm going to take slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, and I'm going to plug in all the stuff I know. So I know y is negative 3. The slope we are using is negative 4/3. The x is 6. And then I have plus b. You'll notice I kind of wrote the 6 like it's floating, because since I have a fraction there, I know I'm going to be multiplying, so I'm going to put a 1 under that 6. So I'm going to go ahead and do that multiplication. Remember, straight across. If you know how to cross cancel, of course, feel free to do that. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24. 3 times 1 is 3. And then plus b. Do some simplifying. Negative 24 divided by 3 is negative 8. And then plus b. I want b by itself, so I'm going to do the inverse of minus or negative 8, which would be plus 8 to both sides. And I get, looks like 5 equals b. I'm ready to write my equation. Y equals, I take the slope we used, and then fill in my b. Again, remember the x and the y go back to variables when we actually write our equation. Whoopsie there. Cool. All right, let me get this one boxed up and we will go on to the next. All right, next one. Write the equation for a line that is perpendicular. Now we're changing to perpendicular, and perpendicular lines have negative reciprocal slopes. And if you don't remember what that means, we'll talk about it right here. So perpendicular to y equals negative 1/4 x minus 1. That also passes through the point. So once again, we're going to be using this as x and y. We'll get to that in a minute. For our slope, this time we need negative reciprocal. Negative in this case means the opposite sign, because the slope here is negative 1/4. So this one happens to be negative, so I'm going to make it a positive. So the negative version, negative of a negative, makes it a positive. Or remember, we need two different signs. So now I'm going to be using a positive slope for my perpendicular line. The reciprocal part means we flip the fraction, so 1/4 becomes 4/1. Now, when I go to do my equation, since 4/1 could be simplified, I can just write it as 4 in my equation. All right, so here we go with slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. I'm going to plug in negative 5 for y. My slope is 4. My x is 2. And then my y-intercept, or the b, which we do not yet know. All right, and remember those numbers came from our ordered pair, the point 2, negative 5, and the slope that we found. All right, so now we're going to simplify. 4 times 2 is 8. And I get, let's see, I need to get b by itself. So I'm going to do the opposite here of a positive 8, so I'm going to subtract it. And when I do that, I get negative 5 minus 8, that's negative 13. 8 minus 8, that's 0. So I have negative 13 equals b, and I'm ready to write my equation. Y equals 4x using my fantastic slope that we figured out, and then my new b value, which is negative 13. On this, just as a side note, you could write this as y equals 4x plus negative 13. That would also be a correct answer. Most of the time we just say minus 13, but if you wanted to write it that way, that would be okay. All right, last one. This one, write the equation for a line that is perpendicular. So again, that means negative reciprocals for our slope. here our slope is the 3/2. And so if I do the negative reciprocal, this time I start with a positive, so the negative version would be literally negative. So that's two different signs, positive and negative, and then the reciprocal is flip it, so 2/3 instead of 3/2. And then I go to my slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. And the point, again, remember, is the x value and the y value. So here I go, plug in for y, the 2. The slope we have is negative 2/3. And the x value I'm plugging in is -9, and then plus b. Once again, because I have some fraction stuff here, I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 under my -9, and then I'm ready to multiply. All right, so multiply straight across. And again, if you know how to cross cancel, do it. If you don't know what I'm talking about, don't worry about it. Straight across. So I'm going to do, here when we're multiplying with the negatives, make sure you only use the negative either with the top number or with the bottom. So this negative 2/3, I'm going to use the negative with the top number. So -2 times -8 is a positive 18. 3 times 1 is 3, and then I have plus b. 18 divided by 3 gives me 6 plus b. To get b by itself, I'm going to subtract that 6 from both sides, and I get 4. 6 minus 6 is 0. So I get 4 is my b value, and write it into that fantastic slope-intercept form equation. Y equals, my slope was -2/3, and then x, and my b was 4. And that is it for writing equations of parallel and perpendicular lines. Adios.